Hey, my name's Caleb. I'm 25, living in a small town tucked away in Oregon where the world feels like it's stuck in a quiet loop. I'm a freelancer, fixing things, building furniture, whatever people don't want to deal with themselves. It's not a dream job, but it keeps the bills paid and my hands busy. I rent a one-bedroom place near the edge of town, nothing fancy, just a creaky porch and a view of pine trees. My mom passed 2 years ago, so it's just me now keeping life simple, no complications. At least that's what I thought. My best friend Ryan grew up with me here. We were the kind of kids who'd sneak out to fish in the lake or burn through summer nights playing video games in his basement. He's different now, made it big as an aerospace engineer in Atlanta. Left this place behind a year ago, but we still talk. Last Friday, my phone buzzed with a text from him while I was sanding down a table for a client. Hey man, mom got this old wooden bed frame. Says she'll assemble it herself, but she's 48. Can you help? I'll pay you. I laughed, shaking my head. Karen, his mom, was always stubborn like that. I texted back, no payment needed. I'll swing by. Truth is, I didn't mind. Their house was like a second home growing up sleepovers, her homemade lasagna, the way she'd yell at us for tracking mud inside. It'd be good to see the place again, maybe feel like a kid for an afternoon. So that evening, I grabbed my toolbox, hopped in my beat-up truck, and drove the 10 minutes to her place by the lake. The house hadn't changed, cedar siding, big windows, a porch swing swaying in the breeze. The sun was dipping low, painting the water orange. I knocked and Karen opened the door, her curly hair tied back loose, wearing a dark green t-shirt that hugged her frame and faded jeans. She smiled, and for a second, I froze. Not because she looked different, she was still the gentle Karen all the neighborhood kids knew. But something hit me. The way her eyes caught the light, calm but deep, like she carried a whole world behind them. Caleb, God, you're all grown up, she said, her voice warm, pulling me into a quick hug. I caught a whiff of lavender, maybe her shampoo or something, in the house. It took me back to being 15, sprawled on her couch after a long day. But I wasn't 15 anymore, and she wasn't just Ryan's mom. Hey, Karen, I said, stepping back, toolbox clunking against my leg. Ryan said you're fighting a bed frame. Need a hand before you throw your back out. She laughed a soft, easy sound and waved me inside. You sound like him. Come on, it's in the bedroom. I followed her through the living room, past the old couch where Ryan and I used to crash into a bedroom I'd never seen before. It was all soft, light watercolor paintings on the walls and the faint smell of old wood. A disassembled walnut bed frame sat in the middle of the floor, heavy and ornate, like something from an antique shop. I set my tools down, already sizing up the job. Karen leaned against the doorframe, holding a mug of tea, watching me with that same calm smile. Still good with your hands? She asked, tilting her head. Hope so, I said, grinning. Haven't broken anyone's house yet. She chuckled, and I got to work kneeling on the hardwood, sorting screws and slats. But as I tightened the first bolt, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Maybe it was the quiet of the house, or the way her laugh lingered in the air. I didn't know it then. But that moment, standing in her bedroom, tools in hand, was about to turn my whole world upside down. I wasn't just there to fix a bed. I was stepping into something I couldn't name, something that'd make me question everything. The bedroom was quiet except for the soft clink of my tools and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Karen's house had always felt like a time capsule, stuck in the best parts of my childhood. Ryan and me sneaking cookies from her kitchen, the smell of her lasagna baking on Sunday nights, the way she'd scold us for leaving fishing rods on her porch. But now, kneeling on her hardwood floor, piecing together this heavy walnut bed frame, I wasn't a kid anymore. And Karen wasn't just the mom who'd patched up my scraped knees. She sat on a wicker chair by the window, sunlight spilling over her, making her curls glow like they were catching fire. Her dark green t-shirt clung just enough to show she wasn't trying to hide her shape, and her jeans were worn in a way that said she didn't care about impressing anyone. But she did. God, she did. I kept my eyes on the screws, trying not to stare, but every time she moved, sipping her tea, shifting her legs, I felt it. Like a pull I couldn't explain. So, Caleb, she said, her voice cutting through the quiet, still building things for strangers. Or you got bigger dreams now. I tightened a bolt, glancing up. Just keeping busy. Dreams are tricky. Fixing stuff's easier. You know how it is. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing like she was reading something I hadn't said. You were always good with your hands, even as a kid. Ryan would break everything and you'd be the one putting it back together. I laughed, shaking my head. Yeah, he still owes me for fixing his bike chain every summer. Her smile softened, and for a second it was like we were back in those days, her teasing us from the kitchen. But then she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, and the air shifted. Your mom would have been proud, you know. She always said you had a steady heart. My hands froze on the wrench. Mom, it had been 2 years since she passed, and hearing her name still felt like a punch I wasn't ready for. I swallowed, forcing a grin. Yeah, she'd probably say I'm wasting it on furniture. Karen didn't laugh. She just looked at me, her eyes soft but piercing, like she saw right through the joke. She'd say you're still finding your way, and that's okay. I didn't know what to say to that, so I focused on the bed frame, sliding another slat into place. The room smelled like old wood and lavender, and the silence wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light either. It was like we were both waiting for something, though I had no clue what. I kept working, but my mind was stuck on her, on the way she said my mom's name, on the way she sat there calm but not distant, like she was holding space for me to just be. You ever miss it? I asked, surprising myself. Teaching art, I mean. Ryan said you used to love it. She leaned back, cradling her mug. I do, but I don't miss the politics. The school boards, the budgets. Now I make paper flowers, teach kids to paint on weekends. It's quieter. I like quiet. Quiet's good, I said, but my voice came out softer than I meant. You don't seem lonely, though. Her lips pressed together, not quite a smile. Don't I? She set her mug down and stood walking over to hand me a screwdriver from the pile. Our fingers brushed just for a second, and I swear my pulse jumped. Sometimes you get so used to it you forget what not lonely feels like. I looked up, meeting her eyes. They were hazel, flecked with gold, and they held mine longer than they should have. I wanted to say something, anything to fill the space, but my throat felt tight. Instead, I took the screwdriver, nodded, and went back to work. But my hands weren't as steady now. Hours passed the bed frame, coming together piece by piece. Karen stayed close, asking small questions about my jobs, my mom, the town. I asked about her art, her Etsy shop, the kids she taught. It was easy, like we'd always talked like this. But every time our eyes met or her laugh broke the quiet, I felt that pull again. Not just attraction. Something deeper. Like she was seeing me, really seeing me in a way no one had in years. By 7, the bed was done. Solid, no wobble. I stood wiping sweat from my forehead, and Karen clapped her hands. You're a miracle worker, Caleb. Stay for dinner, I made spaghetti. Nothing fancy. I hesitated. I should have said no, grabbed my tools and left. But her smile, the way she tilted her head, made it impossible. Yeah, sure, I said, setting my toolbox by the door. Can't say no to your cooking. We ate in the living room, plates balanced on our laps, the lamp casting a warm glow. The spaghetti was simple, tomato sauce, a little basil, but it tasted like home. We talked about nothing and everything, old movies, Ryan's terrible fishing skills, the way the lake looked at dusk. But when I stood to leave, toolbox in hand, Karen stopped me at the door. Caleb, she said, her voice quieter now, you don't have to rush off. It's nice having you here. I looked at her, standing in the soft light, and my chest tightened. I didn't know what I was feeling, gratitude, nostalgia, or something I couldn't name, but I knew I didn't want to leave. Not yet. And that scared me more than anything. The next Tuesday, I found myself back at Karen's house, a paper bag of donuts in one hand and a thermos of coffee in the other. I didn't plan it, not really. But after that evening fixing her bed, something had shifted. It wasn't just the spaghetti or the way she'd looked at me by the door. It was the way her house felt like a place I could breathe, like I wasn't just the guy who fixed things. I told myself it was no big deal, just dropping by to check on her like I'd done 100 times as a kid. But deep down I knew it wasn't the same. Karen opened the door before I could knock, like she'd been waiting. Her hair was down this time, loose curls brushing her shoulders, and she wore a soft gray sweater that made her eyes look warmer. Caleb, she said, her smile catching me off guard. You didn't have to bring dessert. Figured you'd need a break from painting, I said, holding up the bag. Glazed. Your favorite, right? She laughed, stepping aside to let me in. You remember that from, 10 years ago? Hard to forget. You used to bribe Ryan and me with those to clean the garage. The living room smelled like lavender and fresh paint, a canvas drying in the corner. We sat on the couch, the donuts between us, coffee steaming in mismatched mugs. The lake shimmered outside, catching the last of the evening light. We talked about small things at first, her Etsy orders, my latest job, fixing a bookshelf for some retiree. But it didn't stay small. Karen had this way of pulling you in asking questions that made you want to answer, not just brush them off. You ever think about leaving this place? She asked, licking sugar off her thumb. Chasing something bigger. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Thought about it. After Mom died, I figured maybe I'd move somewhere new. Portland, maybe. But this town's all I know. Feels like I'd be leaving her behind, you know? Karen nodded, her eyes soft but steady. I get it. When my marriage fell apart, I wanted to run. Anywhere but here. But this house, this lake, it's where I learned to be me again. Even if it's lonely sometimes. Her voice was quiet, but it carried weight. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "You don't seem lonely. You've got your art, your classes. People love you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. People love the idea of me. The gentle Karen who makes flowers and teaches kids, but sometimes, I don't know, it's like I'm playing a part. I didn't know what to say. I'd never seen her like this, not the Karen who'd laughed at our dumb kid antics or scolded us for sneaking beer. This was someone else, someone who'd carried more than I'd ever realized. Before I could stop myself, I said, "You don't have to play a part with me." Her eyes met mine, and for a moment the room felt too small. She didn't say anything, just reached for another donut, her fingers brushing mine as she did. My pulse jumped and I looked away, pretending to sip my coffee. What was I doing? This was Ryan's mom. But the way she looked at me, the way she listened, it wasn't just nostalgia. It was something real. That night set a pattern. Every Tuesday, I'd show up with something: coffee, bagels, once even a cheap bottle of wine. Karen would have a story ready about her art school days in Seattle, the gallery shows she'd done before Ryan was born, the husband who'd left because they vibrated on different frequencies. I'd tell her about my mom, how she'd taught me to fix things, how I still kept her old toolbox in my truck. We'd sit on her couch or sometimes on the porch swing, the lake glinting under the stars. It was easy too, easy like we'd been doing this forever. One evening, I was helping her clean out a bookshelf in her studio, a cramped room stuffed with sketch pads and paint tubes. I pulled down an old canvas, dusty and faded, showing a boy under a tree, a woman with long hair beside him. I froze. This is me, isn't it? Karen stepped closer, her shoulder brushing mine. Yeah, you were what, 10? You sat there after the school festival waiting for your mom. You didn't cry, didn't fuss, just drew circles in the dirt with a stick. I painted it that night. I stared at the canvas, my throat tight. You saw me, even back then. She looked at me, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen. I always saw you, Caleb. You were the kid who made everyone feel safe. Still are. Her hand rested on my arm, light but deliberate. My heart was pounding now, and I didn't move, didn't dare. Ryan was in Atlanta, oblivious. The neighbors didn't notice my truck parked out front. No one knew. But in that moment, standing in her studio, her hand on my arm, I felt like we were the only two people in the world. And I wasn't sure if that scared me or made me feel alive. The air in Karen's house felt heavier now, like it carried something unspoken every time I stepped through the door. Those Tuesday evenings had become my anchor coffee stories, her laugh filling the quiet spaces of my week. But there was a line we hadn't crossed, a boundary we both felt but never named. I told myself it was respect, maybe fear. She was Ryan's mom, 48, with a life carved out of heartbreak and resilience. I was just Caleb, the kid who fixed things, 25, and still figuring out what I wanted. Yet every glance, every brush of her hand made that line blur a little more. It was a late October evening, the kind where the Oregon chill sneaks into your bones. I'd finished a job early and showed up at Karen's with a bag of takeout tacos, the smell of cilantro and lime mixing with the lavender in her living room. We ate on the couch plates balanced on our knees, the TV humming some old black and white movie neither of us was watching. Her sweater was loose, slipping off one shoulder, and her hair was down, catching the glow of the lamp. I tried not to stare, but it was like trying not to breathe. "You're quiet tonight," she said, wiping her hands on a napkin. "Everything okay?" I shrugged, poking at a taco. "Just thinking. You ever feel like you're waiting for something but you don't know what?" She tilted her head, her eyes searching mine. All the time. Used to think it was him, my ex, coming back to fix things. Then I realized I was waiting for me to stop waiting. Her words hit hard, like they were meant for me too. I set my plate down, leaning back. I don't know what I'm waiting for. Maybe that's why I keep coming back here. Karen's smile was small, almost sad. You don't need a reason to be here, Caleb. You just are. The room went quiet, just the faint hum of the TV and the lake lapping outside. I wanted to say something to tell her she wasn't just Ryan's mom to me anymore, but the words stuck. Instead, I stood to clear the plates, needing to move to shake off the weight in my chest. She followed me to the kitchen, her footsteps soft on the hardwood. As I rinsed a plate, her hand grazed my arm and I froze, the water running cold over my fingers. Caleb, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Come here. I turned off the faucet, drying my hands on my jeans, and followed her back to the bedroom where it all started. The walnut bed frame stood solid, no wobble, a testament to that first evening. The room was dim lit only by a small lamp on the nightstand, casting shadows on her watercolor paintings. Karen stood by the bed, her eyes locked on mine, and my heart was pounding so loud I swore she could hear it. Try it, she said, gesturing to the bed. Make sure it's still solid. I hesitated, my mouth dry. Karen, just lie down, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Humor me. I sat on the edge, then swung my legs up, lying back against the pillows. The mattress was soft, the frame steady, but all I could feel was her presence, the way the air seemed to tighten around us. She sat on the edge close enough that I could smell her lavender shampoo, close enough that her knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved. Is it okay? She asked, her eyes not leaving mine. Perfect, I said, my voice rough, solid as ever. She didn't smile, didn't laugh. Instead, she leaned closer, her hand resting on the blanket near my arm. Am I wrong to keep you here a little longer? To want you to stay? My breath caught. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the sadness she carried, the strength she'd built over years, the way her eyes held both fear and something else, something that mirrored what I felt. You're not wrong, I said, sitting up slowly, our faces inches apart. You're doing the one thing that feels right. Her hand found mine, her fingers warm and steady. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that final line, but we stayed there, lying side by side, her head resting on my shoulder. The silence was louder than words, filled with everything we weren't saying. I thought about Ryan, about the town, about what it would mean if anyone knew, but in that moment, none of it mattered. It was just us, two people who'd found something in each other we didn't expect. The weeks after were a blur of stolen moments. I'd come by with excuses, fixing a shelf, checking the bed frame, bringing coffee. We'd talk late into the night, her sharing stories of her art school days, me admitting I felt lost, without Mom's voice to guide me. Once we painted together in her studio, her teaching me to blend colors, our hands brushing over the canvas. Ryan called, sometimes oblivious, asking about my jobs or his mom's classes. I'd keep my voice steady, but my heart raced every time guilt and want tangled together. One evening, as we sat on her porch swing, the lake dark and still, I asked what happens if Ryan finds out, or anyone. Karen looked at me, her hand tightening around her mug. I don't know, Caleb. But you make me feel like tomorrow might be worth waking up for. That's enough for now. I knotted my throat tight. Enough for now. But as I drove home that night, her words echoed, making me question everything, my life, my fears, and the line we were dancing so close to crossing. The lake was still outside Karen's window, reflecting the pale glow of a November moon. I sat on her couch, a mug of coffee gone cold in my hands, staring at the watercolor painting above her fireplace. A boy under a tree, the one she'd painted of me all those years ago. The past few weeks had been a quiet storm every Tuesday evening, pulling me deeper into something I couldn't name. Karen and I hadn't crossed that final line, not really, no kisses, no confessions, but the weight of her hand on mine, the way her eyes held me, felt louder than words. I'd lie awake at night, my one-bedroom apartment too empty, wondering what this was. Wondering what I was to her. That evening, I'd shown up with a loaf of sourdough from the bakery in town, no excuse this time, just a need to see her. She'd cooked chili, the kind with too much spice, and we'd laughed over how I couldn't handle it, my eyes watering as she passed me a glass of milk. We were in the kitchen now, dishes done, the house quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. Karen leaned against the counter, her sweater slipping off one shoulder, her hair loose and catching the light. She looked at me, her hazel eyes steady, and I knew something was coming. Caleb, she said, her voice soft but deliberate, you've been here a lot lately, every Tuesday, sometimes more. I knotted my throat tight. Yeah, I like it here. She smiled, but it was different, sadder, like she was holding something back. I like it too, more than I should, maybe. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on us. I set my mug on the counter, stepping closer. Karen, if this is too much, if I'm No, she cut me off, shaking her head. It's not too much. It's just complicated. Ryan's my son. This town knows me. And you're young Caleb. You've got a whole life ahead of you. I swallowed, my chest aching. You think I'm just some kid who doesn't know what he wants. Her eyes softened and she stepped closer, her hand resting on my arm. No, I think you're the first person in years who's made me feel like I'm not just going through the motions. But I'm scared. Scared of what this means, what it could do. I looked down at her hand warm against my skin and felt the truth spill out before I could stop it. I'm scared too, scared of losing this, of losing you. But every time I'm here, it's like I'm more myself than I've ever been. Her breath caught, and for a moment, we just stood there, inches apart, the kitchen light casting shadows across her face. She didn't pull away, didn't break the moment. Instead, she leaned in her forehead, resting against mine, her hand sliding to my chest. You make me believe in tomorrows, Caleb, she whispered. I haven't believed in those for a long time. We stayed like that, not moving, not speaking, just breathing in the same space. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a promise, but it was enough. More than enough. The world outside Ryan, the town, the rules we were bending faded. It was just us two people who'd found something real in the quiet corners of a life neither of us expected. Days turned into weeks and we kept our rhythm. Tuesdays became sacred, but I'd find excuses to stop by other days, fixing a loose shelf, bringing her a sketch pad I'd found at a thrift store. We painted together once, her guiding my hand across a canvas, laughing when I smeared blue across my cheek. Ryan called, sometimes his voice crackling over the phone, asking about my jobs or her art classes. I'd keep my answers short, guilt gnawing at me, but Karen's hand on mine would steady me. No one knew. Not the neighbors, not the kids she taught. Our secret lived in the spaces between and the way she'd smile when I walked through her door. One night, as I was leaving the air crisp and the stars sharp above the lake, I turned to her on the porch. If Ryan ever finds out, what do we do? She looked out at the water, her breath visible in the cold. I don't know. But you're the first person who's made me feel like a bed isn't just for sleeping. It's for believing someone will be there when I wake up. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. I'm not going anywhere. She smiled, small and certain. Next Tuesday, then. The lamp by the bed's acting up. Think you can fix it? I laughed, the tension easing. I'll bring my tools. As I drove home, the road dark and quiet, I realized I was questioning everything, my plans, my fears, what I thought love was supposed to be. Karen didn't give me answers, but she gave me something better, a reason to keep showing up. And for now, that was all I needed. Bye-bye.